ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the February 19 edition of the Bizarre Briefing. I'm Bryce Castillo, joined as always with Brandt Hughes.
Hi, that's me.
And John Rael.
Hello.
This is an audio podcast.
Hi. Oh,
Hi.
yes. I'm so used to the cameras and stuff.
Oh, yeah. This is the behind-the-scenes podcast here at Bizarre Magic, where we talk about all of your favorite shows and online internet content and the great accounts and not meme. We don't do a lot of meme stuff. We don't really do memes very much, but shows like Scam Nation and Modern Rogue, the Scam Stuff website, the Modern Rogue store, all sorts of really great stuff. So we're going to kind of get into a lot of it because we have a lot of topics here today. First off being Brandt.
Hi.
A ding dong, the 1080 witch is dead.
That's what we say around here.
That's the thing that we say.
Yeah. So we talked about on a previous episode where we got a bunch of GH5s to record video with.
We got three
in 4K.
new 4K cameras. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing 4K 10-bit. Nice. 150 megabits per second. Thank you very much. Yeah. So we've been recording videos with that new high resolution, and with the way that we publish Modern Rogue videos, there's a lot of scheduling, like mixing videos away from the order that we shot them in.
Sure. Programming.
Yeah. And so we kind of just had like our last push of get all of these old 1080 videos out of the way.
Yeah.
Clean them off the slate, and now it's just gonna be 4K. That good sweet 4K.
So I'm assuming the last sort of nail in the coffin was the most recent Modern Rogue episodes, right?
Yes,
because Penny Flashbangs was in the time when we're doing 1080, and then the first part of Safe Cracking was in 1080.
Yeah, so we did a little bit of 4K before with the fire starting videos. Last month, but I feel like the safe cracking video is like a really perfect transitional video, because the first half of it was all in 1080, and we shot that.
Oh my god, Jason looks so different.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's just, I think it's because he was clean shaven or close to clean shaven at the time, but he always he looks so much more different.
Yep. Yeah, it was recorded quite a while back.
Yeah.
So it was nice to sort of have this narrative arc of, hey, part of this is from a super long time ago and part of this is much more recent, and then now I think it's a changing of an era. It's a shifting of the tides.
Yeah, it's definitely making editing a little different, because normally we would lean on the one 4K camera that we had in a 1080 workflow to be kind of a little more
versatile.
Yeah. But equally, I'm going into a 4K workflow thinking, well, if I blow something up 20 or 25%, it'll still look fine for the majority of people who are only watching on 1080 anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of a back and forth of like, well, I want to keep stuff as native and as shot as possible versus like, needing that extra flexibility.
It's also kind of tough because none of us have 4K monitors, right?
I have a 2K monitor. Okay. But but not 4K. And I don't edit in full screen. I don't have a full screen preview monitor either.
Right.
So, yeah. So that kind of does make it a weird thing. You can always like do 100% just to like spot check, I guess. But then you would never. There's none of us have the ability to watch the whole thing in the intended resolution all at once.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at. John, you did the Penny flashbang episode, right?
I did.
But that was in 1080, or did you do it in a 4K workflow?
It got released in 4K, but quite a few of those videos were in 1080p. There was like one 4K track, but am I misremembering that we released it in 4K, right? I outputted the whole thing in 4K.
Yeah.
I don't know what you did.
Yeah. It looks like it looks like it's 4K here.
Yeah.
So and the ad was in 4K.
Yeah.
And if you have the master shot in 4K, then you get something out of it.
The problem I had with ever releasing anything in 4K with our old 1080 stuff is if you have one camera that's 4K and two cameras that are 1080 and you're cutting between them all and somebody's watching it in 4K, it can be jarring seeing like, oh, this looks really good, and then like all of a sudden you're immediately jumping to a bunch of 1080 streams
for sure. And that I wonder how stark the difference would be, because it's not, I mean, we do sharpening on, or I tend to do sharpening a little bit on everything, but I can't imagine the resolution disparity between 4K and 1080 is so jarring between the two. I think the bit rate probably could be an even more noticeable difference between the two. But I wonder, I mean, well, it would be interesting to take a 4K display and check that out.
I will say, back and forth from an actor's perspective, taking a 1080p resolution and boosting it up to 4K, it kind of does them a lot of favors compared to the people who are shot in 4K.
Sure.
Like it just instantly makes you smoother because obviously it's lower resolution. So
yeah. Well, and that was the big HD jump too, right? Where much more finer detail, and especially a larger disparity between standard def and high def.
Sure.
Even 480 to 720 is pretty significant. But speaking of your episode, John, how was editing that had been on the burner for a while?
Yes, it was an interesting process because like I credit actually myself and Brandt as being the editors, because a lot of it was Brandt feeding me notes, me doing all the notes, Brandt feeding me more notes, and it was just a back and forth of like learning not only what he wanted for that particular episode, but learning the entire style. And so like because of this episode, I wrote our style guide / Bible for the modern rogue, and of course it's always changing and flowing, but at least we kind of now have a foundation that we could point anybody new to and be like, this is where to start at.
Yeah. How did you feel at the end of that process, Brandt?
Fine. I was glad to get it out there.
Yeah.
And just, move on.
Well, was there a reason we had held on to it for so long, or just,
well, so all of the videos from that shoot, we had kind of spread out over quite a long period of time. But this was just an episode that I just didn't feel super strongly about. So it kind of just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed.
Yeah.
And then eventually, it seemed like a really great kind of test run, because it was a bit of a quicker video and it kind of ran through some interesting use cases.
Yeah. Do you feel like, because when I think of the modern rogue editing style, I think of it as very intricate and very graphics heavy, where this one is maybe a little lighter on that, but you feel like John's like in the right space to keep going forward?
I think it's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are like a lot of really, it's really weird because the editing style of Modern Rogue is very specific, but it's not always very consistently specific. Okay. Right? In such a way that like this week's video is about UV posters, and we've got some excerpts from a book that comes up, and it's done in a way that's stylistically very similar to how we've done book excerpts before, but it's very visually different.
Yeah.
Just as far as like color themes and font usage and stuff like that. And so it's interesting because I feel like it's consistent in voice and consistent in like style, sort of.
Okay.
But it's different in actual like execution of that sort of information.
Interesting.
So that kind of thing like moves around a lot. It's very amorphous. So I see something like this, and it's like it's in orbit of that whole thing. You just kind of have to like really nail down some specific that's hard for me to put a put a point on, put a finger on.
For you, John, because you kind of took a fine-tooth comb to previous episodes of Modern Rogue and previous project files, I assume.
Yeah.
How do you feel progress has been on like getting that sort of style, trying to write down an unwritable style.
Well, it's funny. I feel much more confident about the style guide and the Bible than I do the actual episode, because during, the cutting of the episode, I'm trying to not only follow all of Brandt's notes, but I'm trying to live up to this, specific, non-specific style. And so I was it felt like editing blindfolded. It felt like at the end of the day, because it wasn't about like me trying to do what I thought looked cool. It was about me trying to live up to an expectation. So I'm like, I don't know if it looks any good. Like at the end of the day, finishing it like seems okay. I don't know if it's any good,
Yeah.
But so far it's doing pretty good. 690, Jesus.
Yeah, that's it's I remember, I don't remember what day this came out or why I was with Brian
Tuesday.
that day. Tuesday. So that's why, because we were doing the podcast and stuff. But yeah, I just remember Brian being like, "Oh yeah, this is doing like super hot for like an immediate release," and there, it's impossible to know why. Right. Like, was it because it was Tuesday? Was it because it was during the day? Was it because it was shorter? Was it because it was a thumbnail, a title thing? Like, it is all voodoo, and it's.
Yeah, and I'm sure Brian comes over and he's like, well, actually, every video that's released on a Tuesday at specifically 5 p.m.
Well, I think he would if he had any data to like something. Okay, this is a little more. Okay, I'm pulling out just a little bit, but I'm gonna try and keep it short. I had been thinking. This is just separate from that thought for a sec. I had been thinking recently about any sort of success, and especially success online when you have something that does well or people seem to like or whatever. It creates like some sort of like comfort bias, right? You're like, well, okay, this is the thing that I did and I did it well and it went over well, and so the next time I do a thing, I am going to have this set of data that says this does well. But with so much of like online platforms being algorithmic black boxes that no one knows how they work and no one knows why, a robot animal is allowed to decide all this stuff, that it's very, it doesn't gel with kind of the way we've, I think, traditionally seen success.
Well, it's right? The pigeon experiment, like the food pellets are randomly coming, and whatever we were doing when they came, we start repeating that behavior.
Yeah, but also there are more types of pellets. There are more types of pellets, and we're being told that this stuff actually does matter, and it does work, but they won't tell you why.
Yeah, the feeder is telling us there is a reason that I'm feeding you right now.
And so it just made me think of when we have success with one thing, and that we have a tendency to kind of do the same thing over and over again when those successes pop up.
Sure.
But in 2019, there could be none of the things that we think are why something was a success that it makes something else a success. And with Scam, we're doing Scam Nation, and I've been very deliberately trying to keep the format very different from the get-go, because even here we have a tendency to like do something that works and then be like, well, this really worked last time, so let's just keep doing that, when it is best, especially now when the show is still kind of turning around, that we can experiment and try a lot of different types of things to see how we feel about different types of things, right? Like, we had for a while all of this, or even now, like the Scam Nation stuff, we generally are trying to make something really interesting happen in the very beginning. And used to be in Scam School, right, we would do the super tease where it's Brian saying, hey, something cool is about to happen, keep watching, right? And then he would do the intro and say, hey, something really cool is about to happen, keep watching. And so, like, as a process, we trimmed those out, but the idea of that has come back in Scam Nation, of having something big at the beginning, or having something interesting at the beginning. And so for a string of episodes there, it was like, okay, the beginning thing is going to be, he's going to perform the trick at speed, and you'll see it and you'll be amazed and you'll think, oh wow, that is really cool, which I think is really helpful for instructional videos, right? You should be able to see or hear or know what it is you're about to learn as soon as possible. But then we just had the rope episode come out today, and That's more like a traditional Scam School A block, where it's Brian and Jason, and he kind of walks them through it, but it's not fast, or it's not, you know, meant to be faster than normal. It's at speed, and it has even abstracting more. It's kind of hinting at the idea of like having something very big at front, but being okay with it not being in the first 10 seconds, right? The first 10 or 20 seconds, but like within the first minute. And so I'm trying, this is all to say, I'm trying to intentionally mess with format stuff so that we don't fall into one idea. And Modern Rogue is interesting because it is kind of intentionally set up to be like that, because there are so many different types of episodes,
right,
and so many different forms that episodes have taken over the years.
The important point is that the algorithm has replaced God. I think that's the important point that we're. I think that's what we're saying. I think that's what we're getting at.
You know,
for some creators,
for some, yes, for some people, you know, but also like at the end of the day, YouTube is not going to be around forever.
How dare you?
I'm sorry, I'm going to go ask Jeeves for another video server.
That's like, not even fair.
You know, YouTube's not going to be around forever, or if it is, right? Like, you know, all the TV cable, or most of the TV channels are still around, but you know, stuff changes and people move on to different things. And you know, if you think the algorithm on YouTube is scary, I have talked before about checking out the TikTok app. You know, the it's kind of like Vine, or it used to be Musical.ly.
Lip sync focus.
Kind of, but with Vine being out of the picture, people are using it for Vine type stuff. And TikTok is wild, man, because I mean, you can subscribe to people for sure, but you don't even really need an account for it to start like tailoring videos for you. So it's the For You page, and you just keep scrolling up, and they're just new videos, and you heart the ones that you like, and then it just behind the scenes tailors and contours what it shows you. You know, I can tell that it really wants to show me lately Chinese videos of animals, and it wants to show me like certain memes and shy away from other certain hashtags. But equally, the other wild thing is that like the kids are not doing any sort of metadata. They're intentionally using the wrong hashtags, just ironically, right? They're ironically using hashtag ad, hashtag hey Google, hashtag, you know, Zanku challenge, like all the wrong stuff just because it's funny for them. But that's a system that you can use for hours at a time without subscribing to anybody, and completely tailors everything that you see. Even subscribing to stuff, like it'll give you another page for just like people you follow, but it won't do it in order. It'll just kind of do what it thinks you want, and it will be old stuff and new stuff. And it's, you know, YouTube's got nothing on whatever TikTok is if TikTok gets any bigger. So that's kind of a weird tangent and a side street on our algorithms and formats and stuff.
Yeah.
So anything else on the penny flashbang before we move on?
No, it was an interesting experience, and I hope for the next one, which I'm probably going to start up this week. Would you say?
Sure.
Yeah. It'll be. I'll have less notes, and I'll have more of a vision as to what it should be versus what it needs to be.
Oh yeah.
I'll just say, you should count yourself lucky that you're not getting like. Hopefully not the same kind of notes that I got from Brian with Scam School, where it'd be like, this feels like it should be this should be 6-minute video, and then I give him a 12-minute video, and he's like, yeah, it's perfect.
Or the thing that I always got was like, you can lose about 45 seconds just in the entire video. Just
right.
Find 45 seconds. It's like the most unhelpful but very specific stuff.
It's like if you know how to translate Brian code to like real life things, you're saying, oh, he's trying to say that there's pacing issues, and he just doesn't know exactly what it is, but he can feel that there's pacing issues.
Yeah.
But also like sometimes he would give me like time codes, and then the time codes wouldn't be right. And so it would be like 15 seconds off of the thing that he was talking about, and I'd be like, think he's referring to this by context, but the time is very strange.
Yeah. I got to say, your notes were very specific and very accurate.
I give frame-specific notes.
Oh,
so.
Jesus. Yeah.
And how did you get those, by the way? Because I would send, like, a lot of times I would just upload to an unlisted YouTube link and send it to him, and he would come back with frames. Did you download it and then put it in Premiere?
Yes.
Okay.
Wow. Commitment to the bit.
All right.
Sometimes I watch the clips on my phone and then go from there. Okay, last question on the editing thing. All right, because Brandt, you've been in a position to have given notes to John and myself. Do you feel like? What do you feel like is the difference? Because when I was coming on board 4 years ago now, I had watched a lot of Scam School and had watched a lot of Brian's stuff. So I had watched like a lot of your live streams and editing stuff too before. But do you think that there was like a major difference in terms of like onboarding with this?
Honestly, at this point, I don't even remember giving you notes because it's been a while, and also like you.
Though I think I leaned on Brian to give a lot of notes too.
Yeah, you kind of veered away from my notes pretty quickly.
Oh, weird.
Or as far as like me giving you notes, like that just didn't last for a super long time.
Huh.
In my memory, at least.
Yeah, I must have just been leaning more on Brian for notes, not at it because I don't think I was like not cool with any notes that you had ever given me, but I think a lot of it was just like Brian, and the dynamic was different a little bit back then too.
Yeah, because in this case it is much more, I think it's fair to say, kind of much more Brandt's place to give me notes on the Modern Rogue, whereas you were doing Scam School stuff, right? Yeah, so it was kind of,
but Brandt had been the only person doing Scam School every week for 2 years at that point, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it must have just been like, well, at some point Brian's also going to take a look and also going to do a round of notes, so I might as well. I kind of get the things that Brandt is trying to tell me, and so I'm just going to run stuff through Brian and take it off Brandt's plate.
Sure.
Especially knowing that me coming in was to get you to a better status quo just with Scam School.
See, and at this point, if I handed like a Modern Rogue episode to Brian, he would immediately say, well, what does Brandt think?
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So we had a shoot recently.
Yeah.
Was this last week or 2 weeks ago? It must have been 2 weeks ago.
It was not last week.
Yeah. I think it was 2 weeks ago, and it was a little different. It was on location. It was at the Austin on the north side of Austin, the vintage store New Bow.
Yeah, that was fun.
New Bow. Yeah, it was. The store was closed for the day, or they had not opened for the day yet or something. And Brian and Jason kind of had the run of the place with the owner. She was the owner, right? I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they kind of had a little fun competition with it.
Yeah, they were trying to pick out, some vintage clothes and kind of feel out, like, if you go to a vintage clothes shop, what should you look for and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they had a little bit of a discussion with the owner, and then they sort of had like a head-to-head competition of who could find the best clothes,
best outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I feel like Brian's been like pretty resistant to the sort of one-off competition angle side of things because so often Brian and Jason are always there together. If it's a build or something, they're not going to do their own separate builds. They're going to start doing two builds, and Jason's going to be like, yours is better. Let's just use yours.
Yeah.
And so it's always like, I always feel like Brian is playing off of Jason with their dynamic. And so to me, I felt like there was a resistance to Brian being comfortable with saying, okay, we're going to have a Brian thing where Brian is going solo, and then a Jason thing where Jason is going solo, and then we intercut them.
And I think if that is a hang up, or if that is specifically a hang up for him, I think that clothing one probably would have been a mixed or a mildly negative experience. I could feel at the end of Brian doing his solo bit that he was feeling kind of adrift, and I think part of it is like clothing and style stuff is maybe not his wheelhouse. And I could definitely tell like he wanted to, really take this small solo segment and make it his own, or, take responsibility for it. But I hope that what came out of that wasn't a negative experience with doing just, you know, a small solo bit of an episode.
Sure. And I think once it's cut together, I think it'll play really well.
Yeah.
And I think once we have like a foundation for that kind of thing, it'll make a lot more sense to everybody, because we just haven't really done that sort of thing with Modern Rogue.
Yeah.
So we did that.
Because I think even going into it, they had wanted to do it together. They wanted to go and help each other pick out each other's outfit, like, or they would just tag team the whole thing. And it was pretty quickly decided, actually, well, let's split you up and just try this.
I think it may just be one of those things that forever and ever producers will always want the competition angle and the hosts will always want a team angle. Because like I remember, you know, forgive the reference, but like the Mythbusters always fought that. You know, Jamie and Adam would always be like, no, we're just going to make it together. And producers are always like, no, we need a build off. So it's just, I just think it's one of those things.
But I also think something like laying this foundation with the vintage clothes episode helped a lot in regards to the mirror signaling video, which we recorded very recently, where there was a split team element towards the second half of that. And that wasn't a competition, but it was kind of very structurally similar in that it's like, okay, you follow this person, you follow this person.
Yeah.
It was, I guess it was a little bit different in that the vintage stuff was, okay, let's record one. Everybody's focused on that one person. Let's record one. So it was like two separate segments that weren't happening simultaneously that will in the edit probably appear to be simultaneous.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, once that kind of comes out and pieces together, I think it'll open the doors for at least a little bit more variety of style of video.
Yeah. And that shoot felt the vintage clothing shoot felt nice and light, right? It didn't feel super heavy. And it totally had the potential to be, because style is so like it can be very deep and it can be very particular, and you can get into like body shapes and face shapes and colors and seasons and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, right. Time of the year, weather, like literally everything you could go deep into on how fashion and clothes buying could be affected. And they tended to keep it loose, and maybe a little looser than I think would have been perfect. Only because I think it's very similar to like the whiskey episode, where it was a little bit much of like, hey, you know what? Get something that fits and that you like. Because I think for a lot of people, comfort is a big element of going clothes shopping, just feeling comfortable buying clothes. But there are some general fashion takeaways that you can be like, well, okay, generally people should focus on this sort of stuff. But that's a very minor impression that I came away from that shoot with. So this topic, I don't exactly know what this topic is, Brandt. If you can lead me into this, is this something about comments?
Yeah. So we put out an Evan and Caitlin video not too long ago.
Yes.
And people were all riled up about safety stuff. I don't know if you know this about me. I'm a very emotionally affected person by a lot of things. I'm what some people would call sensitive about things. And I noticed a really peculiar reaction within me to a lot of these comments, because a lot of these comments were very impassioned. I would say a good portion of them are people who care about us and the show, and they're just like, hey, this is like super unsafe. You should be more safe in a variety of ways.
Sure.
And generally speaking, I agree with all of that. I've been telling Brian to bolt down that vise for years at this point.
But then it won't be portable.
Oh, yeah. And so it's also one of these things where it's like I was editing that video all week kind of in my isolation chamber, where I'm the only one who's really seeing it. I'm trying to isolate these points where it's like, okay, people are going to have a problem with this. Let's put a disclaimer here. Okay, this is problematic. Let's cut that out, like whatever. And it kind of all falls on my shoulders until it gets published. And then once it's published, then you have like a couple of hours of people giving first impressions, and you can kind of gauge where, like, what you sort of did there. And this one was tough because it was just like a lot of people really into, that whole safety aspect.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't clear, the idea of like, oh, Brian didn't really use the various tools properly, in a safe way with safe techniques.
Yeah. And so it was one of these reactions where like your chest tightens a little bit and your stomach drops a little bit and you're like, oh no, did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
And it was a very weird sensation for me, and I kind of gave it a few hours to sort of step away from it, because I sort of had the reaction of, okay, I understand there's a safety issue here. I know how to fix it. I know how to move forward. I'm good. Thank you for all of the advice and information, everybody, and all of this passion really indicated to me the severity of the situation. Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on.
Message received. Next video.
So I'm like working on captions, and I come back to like 6 hours later, and it's still just like, at 100%. And
well, you had disclaimers in the video, right?
Yes.
So
well, and also it was not your behavior in the video.
Right. But
like you can edit you can edit 10 ways to Sunday, but it doesn't change the fact that the way they use the tools is the way they use the tools.
So
and it's an unscripted show. We don't. Hey, I would love it if we used every tool properly.
So
but we don't get a lot of chances to stop and say, hey, you need to do this thing differently, because they're intentionally. Sorry, one last thing. They're intentionally doing the thing. I'm not going to say they are intentionally choosing to be unsafe, but the attitude and the bravado that they go into using various tools is their choice, right? They are the ones in charge of the narrative, generally speaking. Sorry, John, please go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that the people leaving the comments kind of neglected, ignored, or just didn't see your disclaimers?
No, I think they saw them, and I think they said that even with the disclaimers, this is a liability because people are going to see it and emulate it.
Right.
And people aren't going to, if somebody doesn't say something, then it's not going to land with the same weight as a whole bunch of text on screen that says, hey, here's the real situation. Here's the real deal.
Right. And I think we're kind of, we have used disclaimers as a joke, as a tool for comedy very often for the past many years. I think a lot of channels are guilty of it. And so I think people also just generally give less credence to any sort of written disclaimer, right?
Sure.
It's like, oh, disclaimer, someone made them put that there because something's kind of dangerous. I mean, they made us put disclaimers on the TV show, and I don't think anybody cared. Or the Scam School pilots. I don't think anybody cared. I don't think that's going to stop people from using cornstarch as fire blast material. It's not going to happen. But because we had an open flame, someone said, hey, can you please put this exact wording? And then we did it. And so, I can even see where someone says, oh, well, they put disclaimers on a lot of stuff.
Right.
And, that is what it is.
It's also interesting because, clearly these comments aren't directed at Brandt Hughes, the editor.
Also, yes, very true.
They're just
they're not at your footsteps.
I think they were.
But that doesn't I'm also happen to be the community manager of sorts. I look through all of the comments because I need to clean up when things get bad. So I'm coming at this from multiple different angles, and then when I come back to it 6-8 hours later, and then I start getting that swell of anxiety and that low level of panic attacks, and I start freaking out a bit, and then I kind of just cut off from the YouTubes for a handful of days.
Right.
And then something interesting happened in me where there was just sort of a resentment that started happening.
Okay, I can understand
because
that.
I like to think of it this way. You get into a motor vehicle.
Okay.
You get into an automobile.
Vroom, vroom.
And you go, okay, I'm going to drive this car. And you plug your key into it and you turn it, you roll the engine, and then your car goes, hey, dude, you don't have your seatbelt on. And I go, oh, no, you're right. I should put my seatbelt on. And then it goes, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Except in this situation, instead of the boop, boop, boop.
Yeah, the little
boop,
ding.
It's instead, hundreds of thousands of people saying, "You really fucked up. How could you do this? That's so wildly irresponsible."
Sure.
And just like all these things. And then you click in your seatbelt and they just keep going. They just don't stop.
Yes.
And so it's just like, and we see this all the time where it's like, you know, in old videos, somebody thinks that they have a clever comment to post on the styrofoam knife video. And it's like, yeah, I've seen this comment hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And you're not funny. You're not clever. You're not unique.
Right.
And it's this, but with the impassioned, like, righteousness of you really didn't do the safe thing.
So then I would say is like, okay.
And so now,
if you knew all of this, right? Let's say you knew all this and you get to go back and unlimited time, edit the video, or you could change the video anywhere along the line from shoot to post. Is there anything you would feel like would be an adequate enough change to have stemmed any of this off? Because part of me thinks like, what are you going to do? Like put on screen that they're doing something bad?
Brandt cutaway, but with Brian, and say, now here's how you really use a thing. And then just show, like demonstrate that it's like, oh, we realize how bad this is. Now we're showing progress to a safer environment going forward.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that probably.
There's still going to be people who are going to complain even in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's all I'm trying to get is like at some point, these are people who think they're talking directly to Brian and Jason, who are upset about something that was set in stone months ago, right? That in October, and in a different year, that you know, was not written down. No one said, "Hey, hold this thing like this" or "Do this like this," right? You know, you don't need to carry all of that weight. I know that there are unchangeable biological reactions to seeing stuff that looks like it's directed directly at you. I was saying Brandt Hughes does not need to own all of that, all of the globe. So
you say that
I'm trying very hard not to say stop being depressed. Like I'm just saying responsibility wise, you don't need to own all of that.
Yeah, it's rough,
if
man.
That gives you any.
I got like 11,000 comments on my YouTube channel that I will never read or verify. Like, cause I have some videos that where I, you know, turn on comment monitoring. And because they became popular and because they have, let's say, a woman in them, there are 11,000 comments that I will never go through and read.
So you might even ask, well, Brandt, why even read the comments? Well,
okay. Hey, I think that is a very valid question.
So let's talk about the nature of art.
Okay. Sure.
I looked up the definition of art the other day because sometimes I like to do that. And it was like a real like legislature sort of thing where it was like, this is art, but also here's an exception. This is art. This is art.
Okay, sure. So the definition of art noticeably has changed over the past 1,000 or 2 years.
So I figured out what art is.
Okay. Got it. Let's solve art.
Yep.
Finally.
The gang solves art. So it helps to think of art as an equation with 5 components into it. Okay. 3 are going to be pretty obvious. Most people can imagine this. You have
all right. Hold on, I got this. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Fabric canvas.
Okay. That's your 3rd component.
Right. Red paint. Coral red paint.
No.
And
although it's sort of part of one of the components,
and
but that's
one of the little beret things that they used to think that painters all wore kind of in the 90s.
Actually, you know what? You got them all. 3 for 3. Perfect.
Human. No, please. You need a human.
And okay, I'm gonna say
at least an observer.
Okay.
No, I would even.
All right.
Okay.
You have an artist. This can be one person. Okay. This can be multiple people.
It could be not a person.
I can argue this can be not a person.
Yeah.
You have...
Except copyright law. Copyright law says it's got to be a person. But yeah.
You have a medium. So this is your canvas.
Sure.
It helps to think of it as a painting because this is one of our most classical forms. It just really helps simplify things. You have your canvas through which the artist modifies.
Sure.
You have an audience.
Okay.
It sounds like you're maybe reserved on that, but
I think as long as we're saying no audience is also an audience, Like if the intention is no audience, or is the intention is a no one?
So you have to have an audience, but I would argue the artist can, in some circumstances, be their own audience.
Okay, I think that sounds handshake deal on that one. Yeah.
Okay. And then so these are the three things that a lot of people think. Oh, you have a person who made the art, and then you have the art, and the people who look at the art. Yeah. I would argue this is all part of the bigger equation of concept of art. But you have to tie them together. So there's a component in between each. So in between artist and medium, there is artist perspective. Okay. And that bonds them. And so basically the artist has a core idea. It is filtered and encoded through artist perspective, which influences the type of materials they might use. So what kind of paint, what kind of techniques that they would use.
Like artistic license, basically.
Sort of, but it's a culmination of the culture around the artist mindset. Just tons and tons of variables go into artist perspective. Okay. Then you have audience perspective, and that binds the audience to the medium. So the audience is decoding the message that was encoded by the artist. So you can think of it as like a really bad game of telephone, where somebody says one word and hundreds of thousands of people hear that word and they get totally different words.
Sure.
And I think this is like the most palatable way that people expose themselves to new perspectives, because they hear it in their own voice. It's through their own perspective that they see this sort of
idea.
This idea that's been kind of distilled and turned into something that is not that core idea. Sure. And so like art is one of the biggest leading motivators for cultural changes and shifts in ideology and mental perspective throughout human history, and that's why it's pervasive and why it's lasted this long, and why we still cling on to it.
Sure.
So
I will say, I feel like a missing or underrepresented element is context and time and space.
So context and time filters into perspective, both of the artist and of the audience.
I guess, but I mean literal time and space also. Like I think it is important, the audience and the artist's perspectives, but I think objective time and space is important for any piece, right?
As far as like degradation, or as far as like
no, I mean
cultural.
For me, both of the human perspective elements on it are a paradigm on an individual paradigm, but I think the actual history of the world leading up to any given art piece, as much objective history as is applicable goes into every artwork, right?
Sure.
So there are plenty of artworks that even if we looked at all together and had different paradigms, and the artist had a different paradigm, or maybe this does feed somewhat into the artist paradigm, and we didn't have the history or the context of why something was interesting or why it had as much power as it did at the time, then that is a missing piece of the second it was released or finished, you know?
I guess I'm also thinking about how much art right now we would view as really, really racist and sexist, but we have the context of, this came out in the 1950s. So
well, also things like I believe
and that's audience perspective, because artist perspective wouldn't have seen it as necessarily racist at the time. So the painting wouldn't have been intended as racist, but obviously with racist values, the audience would then perceive it as a racist work.
So I'm thinking of like I believe the Fluxus period of art in I want to say the 60s, but it might have been closer to the 40s. But a very strong movement away from art is what hangs up in museums, and so you saw a lot of performance art, especially blossom during that movement. And it's a lot of stuff that if we looked at it today, or if it was being reproduced today, would feel hokey or feel like really lame. Like there's I mean, even something as simple or as well known as like John Cage's 433.
The silent piece, right?
The silent musical piece, right? Which is a piece that requires both the actual audience experience, right, to be a part of the performance, but also the everything leading up after it and all of the material goods around it, right? It's not just a man sits at a piano and does nothing for an amount of time. There's all of the other people who are watching but are also performing as a part of it. There is like it's actual sheet music, right? That you have to kind of have intentionality by saying, rest for 3 minutes or whatever. And those require a little bit of historical context to understand at least the power of the time.
Yeah, and to me that is all encapsulated in audience perspective, because if an audience doesn't understand that historical context, then it's going to totally change the meaning that they get out of that work.
Okay.
And so it all adds up because, yeah.
All right. Anyway, this is yeah.
So you were answering
that's
the
your art
question
history
about
lesson
what about
today.
the comments?
So to me,
Yeah.
the audience experiencing of a work of art, a piece of art, is the most valuable component of art as a concept to me. And it's just like, that's just how my mind has thought for a long time. And so for me as somebody who is making video for a living, the comments is the most direct documentation of the people experiencing that.
Okay.
So to me, it's like, to understand the entirety of my art, that's like a really vital component to me. And so it's really hard for me to draw myself away from experiencing the only real documentation of other people experiencing it.
Even if that audience is both self-selecting and maybe not representative?
Yep.
And usually anonymous and sexist.
Because all of the people who are like me, who are just going to watch the video and not leave a comment and maybe not like it, and there's basically no documentation of how I felt about a thing after I've seen it, I would say there's still value in that experience, but there's no way for me to know what that experience was for that person, because they don't document it. They don't give me anything to understand how they felt about it.
Okay.
So the YouTube comments are kind of just like, there are so many reasons why it is so problematic, but yet it seems so core to the experience to me.
Interesting.
I get that. I get that. Do we ever have videos where we monitor the comments, meaning that we
Every video.
meaning that we don't allow them to be public prior to approval?
No. I
I
don't believe so.
Not as far as like the full spread of comments, but we do have like tons of blacklisted words that if somebody uses those words, then it automatically gets flagged for approval.
And YouTube automatically will hold comments also, whether it thinks it's spam or inappropriate. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Yes, I think that is all true, right? I think yes, that is the most direct way, that is the way that people who are going to respond to a video will do so explicitly. That it's a tough sell to, I don't know, man.
Anyway, I just want to do dangerous stuff, just like in spite of these comments, because I just loathe them so much. They're actively counteracting what they're trying to do.
Oh, so you're really?
He's gonna cut fingers off because of you people.
Because
you people.
I just like, if you don't let me change, if you just keep badgering me after I've changed, then it's like, well, I'm gonna give you something to badger me about, because I'm just so like upset and frustrated.
Always the reactionary. Brandt. He just wants to get a rise out of people.
Yeah, that's me.
But I mean, I do joke, but also, I mean, that's a facet of being online nowadays, is like, how much are you just trying to get a rise out of somebody?
Sure.
Well,
I'm way less online than I used to be.
I mean, I'll admit, I've doubled down on some of my videos in the past too, because like I got that upheaval of hatred from a lot of men's rights or whatever, And so I started like recruiting more females and doing more female-centric work.
Sure. Yeah.
I guess I just end the way that I always end a discussion about comments, which is put some thought and intentionality into your comments.
Yes.
And understand the context in which it will be read.
I would love, and this is not in response to whatever, to this video or any other specific video. I would love it if we just tried for like 2 weeks. No more comments.
That would be great.
Turn them all off for 2 weeks.
I've been saying it for years. That'd be great.
And just see, because honestly, the YouTube comment section sucks.
Yeah.
It's not a good place for discussion. The people who hang out there are sorry about it. Not always great people. Those tend to be the people who get the most, who get surfaced the most.
No, it's the evaporative cooling effect. It's the more people you let into a space, the more the conversation will average out. And if we're talking about the anonymous cesspool that is the YouTube comment section, the average is very, very low.
And for stuff like, like in the specific example of this video, right? I think the only tool you could have used to like actively try to stem this off is if you like made a pinned comment that was like, hey, the entire thing that you wanted to express, right? Like, hey, got it. Next time, more safety, whatever.
Did you do that?
Right.
No, because
I put it in the description, but
nobody reads the descriptions. People read the descriptions way less than even the pinned comments.
Right.
But like, even then, that is the most effective tool you would have had in that situation. And I still don't think it would have done anything because people don't care. People don't read other comments because it's not threaded in any sort of way to encourage people to read back. So,
and it's not like you guys don't have a curated community. I mean, we have a curated community. We got Patreon, we got Twitter, we got all kinds of places where people who are going to put thoughtful intention can reach out and comment on the videos.
Sure.
Yeah, they just never use.
They just don't do it.
Oh, really?
Because the YouTube comments are there. I honestly think if the YouTube comments got turned off, so like Josh David asks, would you rather people reach out via Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram than YouTube comments if they enjoyed the video? And honestly, probably yes, because we'd love some traction on those social media.
Yeah, and I get these hate messages sometimes from multiple accounts owned by the same person, and I'm always like, my email is pretty much on every video. I am not a hard person to Google. Like, you can contact me directly.
Sure, but you know why he doesn't? Because he'll just block his email. He can make more YouTube accounts. He doesn't give a shit. But you can block. You can figure out keyword. You can block someone pretty effectively via email. So yeah, it's hey, be nice to the people online. Love each other. Hashtag love each other.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but be nicer.
And also, yeah, please comment on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Okay, really quick Instagram story. So I know I'm already putting a topic into a very stuffed lineup. Very quickly, Instagram gave us $30 of like ad credit on the Scam Nation Instagram. And so like, okay, yeah, it says this video is doing well, so we'll just put that money on this video and we'll try to target to some different people and see what comes out of it. And Instagram charges per impression, not per click or conversion, which seems crazy to me because it definitely works the opposite way in a lot of creator-focused stuff. And B, a general waste of time. It got people to heart the video on Instagram, but even by Instagram's own stat tracking, it didn't get people to click on the account but a handful of times. It definitely did not get anybody to click on the URL to go to the YouTube channel. I got a couple of comments, but that's from people who were low quality comments, I would say.
Right.
And it seemed like that was a very bad use of $30. Now, granted, that video was not made to be in an ad slot. It really doesn't have a big sell on it. It's not really trying to get anybody to do anything but watch another video on a different app. So I get that. But also, come on. Like $30 and also, yes, Joshua Davis also says bots. So here's the thing. So it does tell me when people heart something. You know this on Instagram. It'll be like, hey, you got these likes. Every time I would go to someone who had liked the video, it was someone with a private account or had no posts. and either maybe that is where the majority of the targeting that they get in Instagram is, from people who just like really lock down their information or just use it as consuming, but also like it was everyone. It was all of them. So advertising online is sketchy, man.
Yeah,
it's sketchy. Speaking of making money online,
nice.
We for a minute there, we do on the Scam Stuff channel. We are now monetized through the YouTube partner. We're YouTube partners now on the Scam Stuff channel. If you don't know what that means, YouTube partner is it means that we can make money on the ads now that run on anything on youtube.com/scamstuff.
How are we not partnered like 50,000 subscribers ago?
Part of it is because now recently they made it so that your partnership has to be tied to an AdWords account, and Brian controls that, which is why. And so it used to be partnered. I believe it used to have partner status, but we still weren't using it for ads or anything, so it wasn't a big deal. But now partner status comes with, or you have to do it in tandem with AdSense. And so now that stuff is there, which means more than anything, we can now make cards to the website, to Scam Stuff, in the YouTube cards and in the end screen. Which is super weird, because there have been a couple of times where we try to post videos there and I get to publishing and it's like, oh yeah, I can't link to the product.
Yeah, we've kind of been asking for that to happen for some time,
but it happened.
It did eventually happen.
Nice.
And it's something we talked about for a while. And since we put a lot of Patreon stuff on there, like the Patreon stuff's not monetized because it's already monetized through Patreon,
right?
So we're just monetizing the public stuff.
But stuff like this show, maybe we could finally earn $0 off the show.
Yeah, I think we're pulling in about $6 per day.
Oh, okay. I could almost go get a meal at McDonald's with that.
Yeah.
On other monetization news, I don't know, it's not Amazon partner, but there's an Amazon affiliate. Yeah. We had an Amazon affiliate for
about 2 or 3 days.
About 2 or 3 days. This is where you can create special links to Amazon, and when you buy stuff through those, after you click on that link, we get a cut if it's a qualifying type of product. And then that was a long time coming, also because Brian needed to set it up.
Right.
But then I don't 100% know why it got revoked.
Yeah, so
it got revoked though.
So I was on Amazon, logged into the appropriate account, and I was like, okay, let's make some affiliate links for this new video.
Let's get those links.
And the site stripe, which is a banner that comes across the top that is like, hey, put a link in here and we'll generate an affiliate link for you.
Yeah. We'll put in your token and all that stuff.
It was not there anymore. And so I was like, hey, Brian, maybe look into this. And then, of course, no response. And then a day later, hey, Brian, really, you should look into this.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, I have this email that says that we no longer have an affiliate account.
Jesus.
My guess is because he tried to make an affiliate account with a website called Scam Stuff, which just seems sketchy. It seems like anybody who manually reviewed that would be like, no thanks.
Right.
But
we have the same thing with Facebook. We can't make a Facebook URL for Scam Nation because they won't let you put the word scam in a video or in the URL. And so you have to search us on Facebook.
Seems like if people were trying to scam, they wouldn't be using the word.
But it's like the email scam thing. It is so low effort that people who you would catch wouldn't notice or care. So that was a couple of weeks back. That was a week or so ago, maybe. When it got,
that was like a week and a half ago, maybe.
We'll see if we can make some Amazon money.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that, but it'd be great because we talk about a lot of stuff that we bought on Amazon on Modern Rogue.
Yeah, that's where Jason gets most of his materials, I believe.
Yep.
Oh man, well, hopefully that comes around soon. Hopefully you can help support us in one more way. So I mentioned earlier about Scam Nation, and I think I used the word turning it around because by the end of us doing Scam School, it felt like there was a decline, like a baseline decline on what like the worst videos that we do were performing at. And there are a lot of long-term reasons for that, right? Like Modern Rogue moved to its own channel when at the time when we were posting Modern Rogue, everything was doing really well. The types of stuff that we were shooting kind of got a little dull. Some of the polish was no longer on the kinds of things that we were leaning for a long time. We were leaning on. I remember a stretch of time when everything we were shooting was a Cy Stebbins video, and we were booking Diamond Jim Tyler, and I'd be like, hey, anything you can teach is fine, but please nothing that uses Cy Stebbins, because we just shot like 7 videos and every single one of them is about Cy Stebbins. And so but now and I know this is the case because Brian kind of keeps telling me every 6 hours or so, the wording, which I think is kind of specific from the YouTube like stats page, is that each video that we've been doing has been the top 10 video out of the previous 10 videos released. And so that means things are getting better.
Trajectory.
Yes, upward trajectory. And so like the Slipknot Vanish video that just came out, I believe it did actually cross over like 10,000 views within like the first 6 hours or so. That stuff takes a while to show up on the actual YouTube site proper. But like stuff doing like over 30K is good. It's just I back when the channel was really humming, like 30K would be a week episode.
Right. And
understanding that like there are some lower numbers if you just scroll down just a little bit here. And so it's kind of like a very like recent hit, like because even scrolling back a little bit, there are some dips, but there's still some consistency, right? Like Scam School Remix kind of is hit or miss. Even the Scam Schools, I guess, are around 30,000, but then we had some that kind of got a little more goose. I don't know. It's super weird. It's all voodoo. It's also all voodoo.
Right.
I'm attaching a lot of myself to this when it's all voodoo, but we'd like to think that it is because of the format and the types of stuff that we're teaching and the way that we're teaching stuff that people are responding better to it. But I don't know. I don't know. Joshua Davis said, I think hacking the system was a thing that kind of bumped up views at the time. Well, because
now it's available on Amazon Prime,
but that's not going to get people to watch Scam Nation.
I don't know.
I can tell you it's not gonna. Like I know Modern Rogue definitely was getting people to get to watch stuff on the Scam School channel when they were both there. And kind of the narrative around Modern Rogue of like, hey, now we're really doing our own thing and it's our own thing. That I think resonated with people and got them on board with the other stuff. But the way it is now, I don't know. The
important thing is we're making a comeback.
Yeah, I've been told we are making a comeback. So, the only thing now is we just kind of need to film more stuff and kind of get back into it. Because when Scam School was kind of ending, we were leaning a lot on like either clip shows or putting together stuff using old footage. And, we can't rely on that anymore. So we need to get into an even faster rhythm of shooting more stuff. Because shooting stuff is going faster too. Like it was, you weren't there for that shoot, but the shoot that we did, the tip over change with Jeff was there. Like we only did 2 episodes, but they went by like that in under an hour, all in, I think.
Yeah.
And so, it's just a matter of like, we still don't have a space yet. We still don't have a solid space. So we've been kind of leaning on the Loaded Barrel, the Whiskey Tribes bar space. Cause they're just like, you can shoot whatever. And some of it I think is Brian learning to teach to camera or teach to something by himself to himself. So,
right.
I don't know. That stuff's it's coming. It's coming along.
Something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Hey, check it out. Scamnation.com. Though every time I type scamnation.com into my web browser, I have to reload it because it's a redirect. It redirects to the YouTube page. And either there's something up with the redirect or maybe my auto complete in the bar doesn't have like the right HTTP or something in it, but it always has to like, connection reset. You gotta try again. Super weird.
Yeah.
So this weekend, today, there are a lot of people in town already for South by Southwest, which is starting this weekend. And in our circle, more so than that, is South by So Wasted. And if you're listening to this in the podcast, then hey, good news. You can go and watch it now because this is definitely not coming out before Saturday. But we are holding a big showcase. Yeah, it's kind of an event. It's not quite a concert. It's not quite a podcast because it's kind of 2 podcasts and 2 concerts. But Night Attack and Ice Cream Social are doing a live podcast at South by So Wasted on the 9th. And then the Possum Posse and Dual Core are going to be doing some sets.
How are tickets for that going?
Good. The last thing I heard is that there is double-digit number of seats left. Which is one less digit than where it was at a while ago.
Nice.
So it's doing well, and as we get closer to it, there will probably be a few people who try to buy tickets at the door. But I think it'll be a pretty good turnout for that space. You guys, neither of you have been to the North Door, right?
I have not.
We found out about the North Door because that's where Brian and Justin did the Simpsons podcast. Ali Gertz's Everything's Coming Up Simpsons.
Right.
And so they had held their, I think that was also a ticketed show there. And it was a great space, and the guys were guests on that show. And so when it came time to find a ticketed venue, we made it work. And so it'll be cool. So John and Brandt, you guys are going to be helping us out with some of the filming stuff for that.
Right.
It'll be kind of a long day, just because the event will be like 4.5 hours or so.
What is the camera setup going to be like?
It'll be a 3-camera shoot. It'll probably be very similar to what we have now,
like 2 on stage, 1 on the audience. Like,
no. We'll find a master shot somewhere, and then you guys will probably cross shoot. One of you will probably be on a closer lens. The other one will probably be a little wider, and then we'll have just like a GoPro to get the audience. But then also, a Diamond Club fan is coming and is offered to help handle all the streaming stuff. So he is also bringing 2 cameras.
Cool.
And then we've got a friend in town who does venue audio engineering. So he's going to basically be able to be kind of our point person on that stuff for the day of. And then I'm going to be running around just making sure everyone stays on time. Because I think the biggest stress, usually like with the South by So Wasted shows, normally they're free and they're in the middle of a day and they're at a bar. And they don't really care if we go over because nobody on 6th Street cares what happens at your bar before like 7 or 8 p.m. Right? Or especially in the area that we go to. But this is one, because it's a venue, they have something else going on that night. And so they need us out of the door at 6 o'clock. So we are not going to be hanging around too much longer after the show because everyone needs to get the fuck out and find somewhere else to have their reindeer games.
Right.
So so it won't keep you too long or too much longer, you know. You've done more South by So Wasted shoots than I have, Brandt. Yeah.
That's probably true.
At least one more.
Yeah, I was there for the first one.
Yeah. What is your experience? Because I know that you don't do great with crowds and you kind of don't like downtown, especially during South by when it's super crowded. And so we always try to let you go as soon as possible so you can kind of get out of an anxiety situation. How do you normally handle it? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, so I usually don't love it.
Okay.
But one of my coping mechanisms for anxiety stuff is being like hyper objective focused.
Okay.
So if somebody was like, "Hey, come hang out at the bar," then I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so that would be like a strict no-go for me. But if you're like, "Hey, come down to this venue, hold this camera, record these shows, do these specific things. Once your job is done, then you can leave."
Yeah.
Then it's like, cool. I know exactly what to focus on. I can disregard everything else as unnecessary and just like not pay attention to it, and then just really, really focus on this.
Well, fun fact, that's your Saturday. You can get the fuck out once we're done.
Yep.
John, have you done a lot of like live? I know that most everything that we shoot is unscripted and super like basically documentary anyway.
No, I've filmed dozens of live things. In fact, I'm one of the few people who has been allowed to film in the Magic Castle.
Oh, that is literally prestigious.
Yeah, wow. Shot a few of my magic friends in there. So no, I've shot a lot of live venues because, I mean, when you're in LA, when you're doing the filmmaking thing out there, you kind of got to be a one-man band. And so like a lot of my magic friends knew I had like several cameras and I could do like a multi-camera audio setup. Yeah. So a lot of live stuff.
Awesome. Well, that'll help out a lot. You know,
we'll see.
It'll kind of be like, once we get set up, you'll just kind of have to keep going. Yeah. And, you know, because at least with the monorig stuff, it's always like, you know, we can stop and do stuff over or do pickups. And with the live show, A, you're not going to get any more second takes, full stop. But also B, the video element is not dire. You know, I mean, we try to make video pieces out of everything that we can from the stuff that we shoot. And, you know, for certainly like with Ice Cream Social, we want to give them either the raw materials that can help them make whatever they want, or we can just pull something together for them. You know, we want to be able to have something for Dual Core or Possum Posse to show off. And, you know, ideally this Modern Rogue segment might be some sort of video on the Modern Rogue channel, whatever and however that looks like. But also at the end of the day, it's a live event, and it kind of like we're throwing enough coverage at it that we'll make literally anything work. Because when it comes down to the editing day, it's just like I just need like 1 or 2 passes on this thing and get it out the door, because A, it's big, and B, especially with the podcast, and I've said it before, you know, the people who watch the video of this stuff, it's a fraction. It's a fraction of the people who listen to the stuff.
Sure.
And it's why we still do video. It's why we still try to make the video look great. It's why we're going to go out with 3 fucking camera people and have this thing look good. But also we have to make sure that we don't spend a million hours trying to like, you know, nudge everything around to get it just our ideal vision of a perfect 4-hour thing. You know, at some point you have to be a little more economical with that. And so, but thankfully, like doing stuff like the live video, the podcast producing kind of makes doing multicam stuff like second nature sort of. So anyway, that's all to say, a lot of, if probably by the time that this podcast is out, there will be, most of that stuff will be out and viewable. Probably a lot of it at nightattack.tv. So there you go. Yeah, Joshua Davis said it doesn't matter if it looks good, make sure it sounds good. And that's, you know, that's super important. And this will be a test of that for me, because every time we go and do like the cons or something, it's always just me kind of doing a one-man thing.
Sure.
And almost every time I leave the audio in someone else's hands, it is for whatever reason like not usable. Right. Like a convention that we go to that is out of town, and someone said, hey, don't worry, I'll handle the audio. We've got a whole setup here. We're doing audio. Look, we're recording audio now. I got back and I started editing it, and it sounded nice. But then I noticed that it wasn't syncing. It was losing sync, and it was losing sync because it was tied to their live stream. And when their live stream had frame drops, it also had audio drops. And so it was constantly slowing. It was slowing the sync out. And so stuff like that happens, right? Like, and for them, they just need to get that live stream out. You know, they're doing it in the moment. That's going to be the thing that they're doing. Or the other thing is like, oh yeah, I'm just going to get you a copy of what's going out of the board. Well, the way you mix for a live PA system is not how you would mix for recording, because you can blow shit out on a PA system and it can still sound fine, but not so with digital audio recording. So thankfully, we also have people who have done this stuff before. So like it happening in Austin is very much like we can throw every gun that we have at this thing because we can cover it all.
Apropos for Austin.
Oh, gee, okay. Well, yeah. So South by Southwest, if you're listening live, podcastlink.com/nightattack is where you can get tickets. We're going to try to stream it when it's happening, and then we'll try to stream the podcast cut on Tuesday evening in lieu of the actual show. One last thing about Night Attack. I was looking at some of our bookings. We're trying to book more people, trying to be better about booking people on Night Attack, the comedy podcast, because like Brian and Justin have a great rapport, but they also, it's when they have someone else kind of in with them that kind of makes stuff look, makes a different perspective and a different voice, you know? And so for the next like month, we have like a lot of big episodes coming up. After South by So Wasted, we're gonna have Andrew Zarian on. He's from the guys from Queens Network. He recently like quit his like big boy job and started doing podcasting full time, and apparently works for him. So that's super awesome. Tomcat, the musician, he's very muscled and sings in a great. I don't know if it's a falsetto, but it's a very jaunty song. But also he's got a new song out called Shapeshifter, which is like
heavy metal.
It's like a rhythm song. It's like a like dance hall sort of like rhythm beat, and it's interesting because he kind of takes his own twist on it. And then Evan and Caitlin, who we just had on Modern Rogue, who had on Modern Rogue multiple times, they have a new podcast out,
right?
And so they're gonna be joining us, and we'll probably talk a lot about the podcast. And they just went to a maker fair. What is it, Cardboard Con or something like that?
They went to a Workbench
Con. That's it. Yeah. And I know that they got a lot of interviews there, so I'm sure they'll have a bunch of stuff to talk about. And they're just really fun and sweet people.
Yeah. I
was watching their videos, and it's just like they're like overflowing with happiness and positivity.
Yeah, they're great.
But I've been feeling really good about the podcast bookings lately, especially in getting like new people. The week before this last week, which was the movie draft, we had Lobro, who is like a Twitch streamer. He focuses a lot on like positivity and mental health and self-care and stuff. And it was like perfect. It was like the perfect pairing. And I was like really self-conscious because like, you know, he's not really in any of our circles, or he's not in any of the guys' circles. I've watched him on Twitch before, and there's not really a lot of fan overlap in terms of like our diehards that we're in contact with a lot.
Right.
But when he came on, he was great. And then when we ended the stream, he was talking. I was like, oh yeah, a bunch of people, you know, heard that I was going to be on your show, and they were super excited. And that made me feel good, especially because I won't say who, but I heard the name of a musician who was super stoked that he was on. And that blew my mind because I really like that guy. And in any case, but then like 2 weeks before that, we had Darren Kitchen on from Hack 5.
Oh yeah.
And we literally called the episode Ghost Dad 2 because he had his own actual Ghost Dad level story.
Yeah.
And it's great.
I caught that episode. It was very good.
It's really solid. We had Kate Raft on a few weeks back after we accidentally snubbed her when we booked her husband a few months before. So I've been feeling really good about the podcast bookings because we're kind of going outside of our circle a little bit, and it seems like they're hitting. So I don't know, I'm just really stoked about that. Let's see. We can skip these two.
We could skip the Philosopher Architect.
Okay, awesome.
That'll be more next month.
Okay,
yeah,
so
we got a partnership with Doghouse Systems, and they're providing us with cool tech computers, and eventually they're going to be powering like our, you know, HQ, all the live streaming and all that. But for the moment, they gave us 2 systems. And so I did a whole video filming Brian doing an unboxing with the people who run Doghouse.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't want to turn it into a quote unquote ad because they're our partners. Like, they are invested in the outcome as much as we are. And so it was all about saying like, what solutions does this offer that we didn't have before? And this thing that I created was more of a I end the video saying, look, I know why you guys really came here to watch. You came here to watch a bunch of computer porn. Well, here's some computer porn, you electronic perverts. And so it's kind of a joke. So
is it okay if we debut the video here?
Yeah, let's
we won't have audio here, but so oh wow, that's great. So we kind of have the cases and the different lights going.
I got some badass bro step playing in the background.
Yeah, wow, these are great, good action stuff. Nice. And you did all this type work too?
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. This very much does kind of look like an ad, though.
Oh yeah, like I wanted to be as cheesy as I could make it for, like, you know,
Yeah.
Because you see all those cool tech promo videos and
sure, you got the lens flares going.
Yeah.
I do think the only thing it's kind of missing is like the super duper up close of like silicone chips and the
no, that's a good
wiring.
point. I might add a couple of those.
But yeah, this is cool, man. And you went and like shot this stuff. You gotta redo that and clean that logo up.
Yeah.
But you
Jason
shot that this
touched
past week. you shot this what, like last week? This past week?
Yeah. Over the last few days, I turned my apartment into like just a shooting stage, and I gotta say, I've never shot anything like this with like a pure black background, and I am mildly regretting not going green screen.
Really?
Because I don't know how to make a background really disappear unless I can literally make it disappear.
Yeah.
And like I'm okay with that stagey look that it has, but in hindsight, it's like I'm just so much better at lighting green screen.
Well, with the black background, especially if you're trying to have it be blacked out, you have to control your lighting a lot more, and you kind of play with exposure. Like sometimes you have to just kind of manually fudge it. Like we did a video, let me see if I can find it, but we did a video on the card targets, like a product video when we had the plastic cards and the card targets, and we had an intro video like this where we had like a lot of black background stuff, and this we shot this in the warehouse, and it had to be like, it was a mixture of like controlling the light so that the background just wasn't as lit as much for that stuff, but also a mix of like going into After Effects and just like, painting those keyframes and just kind of lowering the exposure manually. And it was better than if the lighting wasn't controlled or that if we hadn't done any of that stuff. But there are definitely parts of it where it's difficult to control light, because it just kind of wants to bounce everywhere, especially if you're throwing a lot of light, or like if you were using those soft boxes. Yeah, that one, I'm sure that's going to want to go everywhere.
Yeah, I wanted because for the product, I wanted nice even lighting so I could see everything and have control. But nice even lighting doesn't work for a disappearing background.
Yeah, and so that something like those work lights with the tanning light, the tanning lamp, the metal like rims. Yeah. Those are a little more controlled on in terms of light. It's more direct light if you don't like diffuse it and all, but that can also give you like pretty, if you don't have like a barn door.
Yeah, no, and I have like the full on LEDs with the barn doors, and I could have taken out the diffusion, but
yeah. But there you go.
All right.
Well, very cool. And so that'll be a part of an interview video coming up eventually.
Yeah, it'll hopefully be ready in a couple days, because I just gave Brian the first cut of it today.
Oh, okay.
And his note was like, we could cut it in half, and I'm like, yeah, I agree.
Sounds about right. Yeah, and then we have a video that's like almost done from you in the hopper for Scam.
Oh yeah, the black the masked magician.
The masked magician. Yeah. Which I think it is good, right? I know we had a handful of last things, but
yeah, like I have one last set of notes I got to do. But when do we want that one to come out?
I would love it to just be done, not because it's like weighing on me, or because it's good. I'd like to get it off your chest.
Yeah, I just got to do those notes.
But we were talking about, I don't know, the quote unquote streak going now with the Scam Nation videos, and I think right now it's like, well, the mailbag stuff that we've done before only did so well, and if we break the streak.
See, I
get
think
into
voodoo,
the metagame.
Then the voodoo, yeah.
Yeah, see, and I think this one, like,
it's good.
If I'm talking about the algorithm, I think this one will do better, because I think people will like the notion of like quote unquote gossip.
Okay.
Because he's talking about like, what do you think about the masked magician, Mr. Magician? And people love that question. Like everybody asks Penn and Teller and David Blaine and all of them, like, what do you think about the masked magician? So it's just kind of a juicy, quasi, not really, but kind of a juicy topic.
Maybe, though we had a very similar, the Michael Carbonaro one. Like, this is a good video, and the title is very gossipy, but the video is not gossipy. Yeah. And it did okay. Like, it did better. It probably did better than the 10 videos before it. But, some of the other mailbag stuff, I think a mixture of that going over a little mildly is probably what's holding it back or holding it from being released. If I could read into the mind of just a random person. But like the mailbag stuff is really good. I think all of the mailbag videos we've got are very good. They're shorter, but they have really good information that is applicable not just to Magic people. And
no, they've been some of my favorite because I remember like after shooting pretty much every mailbag episode that I've shot with you, I always had to have a conversation with Brian about it. Like I was always compelled to be like, hey, that totally reminds me of this time in college, or that totally reminds me of the last production I was on. Because he's got these great insights. Yeah, and so that's something he will drop at the drop of he'll spout at the drop of a dime. He loves to talk about this sort of stuff. He loves to talk about motivational when the
stuff.
hat spouts.
Yeah, and I think I would like to do it because I do think it's a strong video, and I do think the streak, I think it could also be a beneficiary of this and not something that detracts. But it's, who knows? I want to end the streak with this video. But yeah, and the other thing is they're easy to shoot and they come out nice, right? Like a 2-camera shoot for that type of video is probably overkill, right? I mean, we spent how many years doing Behind the Scam, and that was always a 1-camera shoot thing, right? Like this is even simpler because it's him reading a letter and then just talking about it. So I don't know. Brandt, I'm going to give you the off-topic thing today because we don't have a lot of time, because I just found out some people are going to a movie ahead of us. Classic. What's the Star Trek update? It sounds like you're watching more Star Trek.
Yeah, so I'm back in the saddle, back in the Star Trek saddle,
back in the Star Trek
space saddle. So I've been watching the original series on Netflix, the restored version. Yeah,
is that like upscaled or anything?
Like remastered? I think it's. I haven't seen any prior versions, so I can't tell what the exact differences are. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm on season 3 right now. There are only 3 seasons. Okay. But I just started season 3 last night. And there are things that I like and things that I do not like. There are some weird cultural things where you just kind of have to remind yourself, this was in the 60s, right?
And background, if you're just joining us, Brandt just recently did a big binge of TNG,
DS9,
and DS9, and some of the movies, right? You also watched some of the movies.
I watched one of the movies and the other series.
Battlestar.
No.
Discovery.
Next Gen. Voyager.
The new one.
Well, I've been watching Discovery. Okay, but Voyager.
I see. So so you've got 1 season left on original Star Trek. Out of 10, how many starships would you give it out of 10?
The original series?
Yeah,
I would give it 6 starships out of 10.
Okay, that's it's respectable.
I'm really enjoying it from like a historical perspective, because the music production, oh my Lord. It's like this big bombastic orchestra thing that just really screams like old media. And I always have to remind myself that, this came out before 2001: A Space Odyssey, which completely revolutionized the industry as far as special effects. Yeah. And probably other things. So almost all of the special effects in the original series are transparency based. So it's okay, can we do this with a simple transparency? Yes. All right. Then it's in the video. No. Then sorry guess not. It's transparencies and people in suits.
Well, especially in a major channel sci-fi, any sci-fi show has to cut on costs.
Sure.
Which is why they don't make a lot of sci-fi anymore, because it's very expensive.
Did you find it off-putting when they added the singer to the 2nd and 3rd seasons in the opening?
So I skipped the opening except for like I always watch it on like the first and last episode of the season because I'm like, okay, let's see if anything changed, and then like once more just because I can. Yeah, but whenever I do the skip intro, I get like the last second or two of the singer, and I'm just like, that's a shame.
Yeah, really annoys me because the first season, like, it was just this funky, like, you know,
it's like samba. It's this weird, like, okay,
dance to it,
very jaunty.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love seeing the special effects and the way that they stage everything and the way that they always shoot at the same rock formation and they're like, this is an alien planet. And
favorite episodes.
Oh, I don't.
Can you give us
pressure?
Is it easier to say 3 or 1?
Like, if you put me on the spot, I can't even remember any.
Well, tell me, what did you think of the Return of the King episode? It was the one where they're watching the Shakespearean actors, and it turns out one of the Shakespearean actors may or may not be a horrific Hitler-esque tyrant.
Oh, now that you say Hitler, I remember the episode where they actually went to another planet that was like in the middle of a Nazi takeover.
Oh, jeez.
They really like to do this thing where they're like, okay, what if they found a planet that was like Earth, but something was slightly different?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like, oh, we went to this planet and it's Earth, but all of the adults are dead. Yeah. Oh, we went to this planet and it's Earth, but the Romans happen to never fall.
So they got Romans on TV.
Yeah, and just like a lot of stuff like that. That episode was fine. It probably wouldn't rank among my top, but it's not my least favorite either.
I just loved it because of that actor. Like, he just walked that razor's edge of like, I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to feel regret, but I acknowledge what I did was horrific. And
I believe that was Adolf H.
So there are my favorite thing about the original series is you can see elements that they took for later series and said, okay, let's expand with that. Let's run with that. Because, you know, at the time, like, computers were a real novelty. Just like, have you heard about the thing that we call computers? So they constantly do the thing of, oh, but what if the villain this time was a computer?
Oh.
And the reason that it's evil is because it doesn't have a soul.
Oh.
And so
like a lot of like old Philip K. Dick stuff where you're like, computer bad.
But I kind of love it with the context of having seen TNG and going, oh, they had like a whole series long arc about how Data basically has a soul and can be recognized as, you know, this independent being with agency, which was always kind of the punchline of the original series. You know, they always talk about
dumb robot.
Yeah. And just like a bunch of little things like that. And also, like, I just remember they had a Purge episode of the original series.
That's the red time.
It's like note for note, the Purge.
Oh shit.
And just seeing a lot of these, you know, concepts from such an early stage of development is kind of really interesting.
Dude, sweet. Check it out. Star Trek on Netflix.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it here for the February edition of the Bizarre Briefing. Let's do plugs really quick. John.
Skepticallypwned.com. It's the PWND, but you have to say the P, otherwise who knows what you're talking about.
That's right. Brandt.
Smart.
Your plugs?
They're all real.
Oh, thank you.
Snap. You can find me on Twitter at Gadwag, GATOWAG. Also on Twitch. I just recently did a playthrough of Ape Out, which is very interesting. A delightful little ditty.
Yeah. It almost looks like not to get off topic, but that game looks really cool and it sounds really cool. It also looks like the best mobile game ever ported to a PC.
It's very much like, oh, what if we did
a very simple concept.
Well, it's a lot like Hotline Miami.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, a little bit less puzzle based than Hotline Miami because there's some procedural generation. But it's like, what if we did Hotline Miami, but it was like King Kong, but also it was Whiplash.
Yeah.
And then, and I like all of those things, so it was great.
Very cool. Yeah, Gadwag on Twitch and Twitter and Instagram. You still using Instagram much?
A little bit. I haven't been posting much lately just because I haven't been getting out there taking photos, but we do post to the Modern Rogue Instagram every week.
Modern Rogue Show.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at Brycas, BRYCAS. I handle Modern Rogue, or no, Scam Nation Show on Instagram and on Twitter, and I
trying to steal my shine.
And on the Facebook where you have to search Scam Nation. Check all that stuff out. You can usually also see me here streaming on the twitch.tv/Night Attack channel. This show is also streamed live on twitch.tv/Night Attack around the end of the month or the beginning of the month as the dice has to roll. And of course, the podcast, you can find it at bizarrebriefing.com. You can find old episodes, show notes, time codes, all that great stuff there. bizarrebriefing.com.
Wow.
We are do this show once a month. So with that, we'll say see you next month.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.